Is one of those days in which we brief the rating agencies on the state of our county's economy in order to ensure that we retain our AAA bond rating. And so I was just on 3 conversations with the major rating agencies, and I can share with you one quote that I think is pretty nice, which is one of the agencies says, "Everything looks great." So let me assure you, everything does look great. Our county is strong economically and conservative on the measures that are important. We take seriously our AAA bond rating, and we do what we need to do in order to keep it. So that's why I was late, and I apologize for holding you guys up. I'll chat about a few things with you this morning. One is that last week we sent a letter to Pete Ron with respect to the governor's plan for traffic relief. There's an expression that comes to my mind every now and then, and this is one of them, and that expression is, you're in the right church, but perhaps the wrong pew. And so it is great that the governor has focused on the congestion that we have in our region. It is terribly important to address it. But there are so many unanswered questions with respect to this particular plan, and its impact on our county is obviously incredible. And so we've invited the secretary to come to our council to address these questions, to understand why a program that had been originally a multimodal program on 270 now seems to be only about automobiles and not about transit. Where's the Corridor Cities Transitway in this project? Where is the American Legion Bridge in this project? Why did they not go with the county council's recommendation for 2 reversible lanes as opposed to adding 4 lanes on 270? What analysis was done that we can, in fact, expand 495 by 4 lanes? What studies were done, period, in advance of this? What analysis was done in advance of this? What are the tolls? What have they estimated the tolls would look like for a $9 billion project? So we think these are significant questions that deserve answers, and so I am hoping that we will have that dialogue. I am hoping that we will have consultation with our county going forward. There was none, as you all realized beforehand, but my goodness, there better be serious consultation going forward. So that's my hope, and we'll see if the secretary joins us, and if not, I am hopeful that they will respond to the questions we have posed as a committee in writing so that we get answers to these important questions. Let me turn to land use. One of the responsibilities of our council over the course of the last several months has been looking at portions of Bethesda where we believe development opportunities are and where we believe development opportunities should proceed. Of course, proceed in a manner that's appropriate. But what that has called into question is our capacity at the school level and whether or not we will have enough school capacity to address all of these development projects. So I have not moved to the full council the previous action of the Fed committee, which was on Rock Springs. We have, of course, White Flint 2 and Grosvenor. All 3 of those plans impact one particular cluster, the Walter Johnson cluster. And I said to my colleagues, I'm not moving these plans forward to the full council until we have language that we are comfortable with that addresses this issue. And I think now we are very close to getting that language. What is clear is that we will be looking at every site that comes before the planners as a potential school site, and that we are calling upon our planners and our school system to look at every particular site and see whether or not that is where we need to have an additional school. We need a middle school in this cluster, and we need an elementary school in this cluster. So it's important that that happens, and I believe now we are close to getting language that will ensure that happens. And assuming that's the case, then I will now move to the full council consideration of the Rock Spring plan, and White Flint will be happening shortly thereafter. Tomorrow, we will be introducing a resolution on asking our state to move to 50% renewable power in the renewable portfolio. It is, in part, a statement that given the Trump administration's decision to pull out of the Paris Climate Accord, given the Trump administration's decision to jettison the Clean Power Plan, it is more important than ever that state and local governments do what they can do. And this is something the state can do. It is something that California has done. It is something that New York has done. It is something that Maryland can do. And it does make a difference. It makes a difference in terms of air quality. It makes a difference in terms of quality of life. It makes a difference in terms of creating good, clean jobs, green jobs. All of that is true. And we use too much coal in the state of Maryland. And we need to use a lot less coal and a lot more renewable power, and it is something that is easily done. So we hopefully will act unanimously with respect to that resolution when it comes before the full council, and I would imagine it would come before the full council a week from now. I'll stop. Turn it over to you guys. What's on your mind?
You received a response from Secretary Ron to attend the meeting. I believe October 24th is when you guys have it scheduled, the
Yes.
Transportation Committee meeting.
Yes.
Have you received?
No, actually, not the 24th. We moved it till, Aaron, I think the 26th? Is it still on the 24th? Okay, I apologize. I have not received a response yet.
Have you received any response from the state on the invitation?
I have not seen any response from the state on this invitation. I frame it that way because we do get so many emails that there are times when we've gotten something that I haven't seen, but I am pretty confident that if we had gotten a response, it would have been brought to my attention. Yes,
Going
ma'am.
back to the supplemental appropriation for the gang units and whatnot, do you think that 844 or something around there is enough?
I rely on our police and our state's attorneys when it comes to this issue. And I have said publicly, and I will affirm, that if more is needed, I cannot imagine our council would not give them everything they need in order to stop this scourge. Okay? Whatever it takes. So I can't independently say that our police need more. If our police aren't asking for more, I'm not in a position to say they need more. What I have said is, ask for everything you need.
You mentioned inserting language. Would this language go into the sector plans themselves, the White Flint 2 plans?
All three plans. So what we are working on is all through Grosvenor.
Okay.
So it's White Flint, Grosvenor, and Rock Spring. All three of those plans have a significant impact on the Walter Johnson cluster. And so, but the issues that we're dealing with actually are all down county, is generally the case, where we're getting a lot of kids into our school system. There's a lot of turnover of existing housing, and there's new development. All three of those factors are feeding into the need for more school construction. And getting land down county is the critical issue. It isn't simply just building, it is where can we find the land? So when you're looking for 10 plus acres, it's hard to do in the down county. You may recall in White Flint 1, we found 4 acres on the Lerner property, which I believe was something on the order of 40 acres. Okay, so you're taking a small piece out of a large parcel. We don't have a lot of large parcels in the down county that are undeveloped. So it is more important than ever that you really focus on every large parcel. Goodness, what is this a potential area or not? Every parcel we have to look at.
So what would that language be like? Can you give an example?
Well, literally
Basically say, if there's a large parcel in front of the planning.
literally every parcel we're going to be looking at, because most parcels are, if you will, 5 acres or so. So there could be dedication involved, there could be buying property involved. You know, I had long argued for the school system to have a separate pot of dollars just for acquiring land, because it is getting more expensive. But it also, then you have to factor in, when will you actually need the school? Because all of these are projections of 30 years out at full build-out. So the notion that you would take land in year one for something that may not actually ever happen, depending on what you think the build-out's going to be, also makes it problematic. But we need to have every parcel examined, and so that's the language that we are talking about, that literally requires the planners and the school system to assess every parcel that comes forward as a potential as a school site. It is, in my judgment, the number one public amenity that we need in this particular part of our community, to hold faith with our community. And that's a lot of what we see happening today. It is that people don't have confidence. They see so many kids, they see development taking place, and they say, really, are you going to take care of our kids? And so, from my point of view, you really want to bend over backwards to demonstrate to the community that we hear them and that we are absolutely serious about addressing this issue and will ensure that it takes place.
Why not build taller? And you need less land, but you just build more stories.
So I've been among those that have been pressing that very point for a number of years now. The school system in the past has been, if you will, a little more conventional in how it has thought about school buildings. Other communities have been more innovative with respect to that and have built up, have more urban schools. There are some that have converted office buildings into schools, and we have a lot of vacant office buildings, or we certainly have some that are vacant. So we need our school system to look at this issue differently. But you're absolutely right. We need to do things differently.
Do you know how long this language will take to be drafted and inserted into these plans, and then when they'll hit the council for a vote?
Well, they won't hit the council for a vote until we have the plan. But the language, I had offered language in committee last week. The committee took some of that language and made suggestions for other language that staff is now in the process of drafting and circulating. And my hope is that we can come to terms with that language and get it done. Unlike other master plans, this is issue number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 for our community. Okay? Some master plans bring up all sorts of issues that you have to deal with, compatibility issues, heights, and all of those kinds of issues. That's really not. Those aren't big issues in these plans. It is all about the schools. And that's why I've been committed to making sure that we are responsive to this community and to future communities. Again, because this will not be unique to the Walter Johnson cluster. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, a committee is meeting on a bill regarding the burial sites today. Do you think Montgomery County is behind the curve on bringing this into the light?
There's no question we were behind the curve, which is why I co-sponsored the legislation that's being taken up. We did not have a mechanism in place like Howard County, like Prince George's County had in place to ensure that there was an inventory, that we were on top of this. So we're playing catch up. And my hope is that we will get this legislation in shape that will address all the issues people have, because it's important. We can't be building and disturbing the remains of people who've lived in this county. It's not okay. So that's why we're taking this matter up, because we weren't where we should have been.
Are you comfortable voting for the minimum wage bill after the HHS committee made changes to it?
So appreciate that the HHS committee adopted the county executive's proposal. the county executive has said, this is what I will sign. So my belief is that this is a path to get us to yes. This has always been about pace. This hasn't ever been about whether people work too hard for too little. We concede that. People work too hard for too little. But it is about the pace of getting to 15 that has always been the fundamental issue, and protecting our small business community. And in Montgomery County, small business is big business. It is what drives employment. It is what drives our economy. And there are indications that if you go too quickly to 15, you will harm small business and you will harm the very people that small business employs. We've seen studies, and of course all studies are debated, but in Seattle, even at $13 an hour, they were beginning to see contraindications that people were actually suffering as opposed to being helped by a 3-to-1 margin. Now that may not be true here, but would be the only major suburban jurisdiction in the country to adopt $15 an hour. So it is something that needs to be done, but needs to be done carefully. It needs to be done reconciling what I've called two competing truths. People work too hard for too little, and small businesses need to be attended to. So I think the county executive has come up with a proposal that satisfies both of those needs.
Are you a yes now?
I voted for the bill out of committee. That is a yes. I've always said my goal is to get to yes on this important measure.
Is there any regrets with voting to fund this study that now the county won't pay for? Was it a waste of time to go through this?
Well, I don't think it was predetermined that it'd be a waste of time. I believe that the study was flawed. Okay? So does that happen? It happens. So I commend the county executive for saying we're not paying for it. I commend the organization for basically saying we're not charging you. Okay? So they realized that this was not well done and not worthy of the work that they do. And they do a lot of work for a lot of local governments, okay, across the country. They do a lot of work for a lot of local governments. This wasn't their best. And they raised their hand and said, okay, we're not going to charge you. And the county executives made it clear he wasn't going to pay it. But is it worth seriously looking at its impacts? Absolutely. So it's an important issue.
Do you think the county should use PFM moving forward?
Well, I don't think this was in their wheelhouse. Okay? I think that part of what happened with respect to this particular contract was that they were under retainer. And so that you didn't have to put out an RFP, you didn't have to waste the time to find somebody that could do this work, that they have really a good reputation. I'm not going to run these people down. Okay? They do a lot of good work, but this was not in their wheelhouse, and they subcontracted it out, and it wasn't good work.
On an unrelated issue, I understand DPS and Diane Schwartz-Jones is working to minimize disruptions in downtown Bethesda with related construction projects. There's a number of construction projects going on in downtown Bethesda. And I was wondering if your office was working on that at all to try to minimize sidewalk closures, lane closures, and just general traffic being caused by the breadth of construction happening in downtown Bethesda.
Yes, we've been in a lot of conversations with Ken Hartman and the executive branch to make sure that every agency is talking to every other agency so that we understand exactly what's going to happen and coordinate it. Our citizens are saying exactly that. Make sure that the county government is coordinating all of these redevelopment projects and street closures and sidewalk closures so that it has the least disruptive impact on our community. And that's what our conversations have been with the executive branch as well.
Is there like a formal working group that's happening now?
There's not, but you know, in the new Bethesda plan, there will be an implementation committee. So it's sort of an awkward situation where you have a lot of things going on now that are unrelated to the Bethesda master plan. And the Bethesda master plan will have an implementation committee that coordinates all of the activities under that plan. So it's more just sort of catching up and just having government do what government should do, which is to be coordinated and focused on minimizing the disruption to our community as these projects go forward. Projects that are obviously in the public interest and projects that also bring about disruption. What else, gang? Mr.
Tom
Tom?
last week talked about Amazon.
Yes,
What's your reaction?
I apologize. Let me hear the question again.
I just what that COG talked about Amazon last week.
Oh, yes, I apologize.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they were very supportive of Montgomery County. Would you elaborate?
Well, actually, what I would say is what I had asked COG to do was to make sure that all of our individual submissions include how strong the Washington region is. So I believe Montgomery County's submission, which we will be making at the end of this week, is going to be stronger by virtue of showcasing how strong the Washington region is. And so that's what COG made happen, is a submission that we can append to our own response to the RFP that shows just how incredibly strong the region is. Montgomery County will be submitting what I believe to be a very strong and competitive proposal.
Other
So,
jurisdictions.
just one quick follow, if you don't mind. It sounds as though you're saying if Fairfax gets it, Montgomery County can say, well, at least we won a little bit.
Well, what I will say to you is, one, Montgomery County is going to have a very competitive proposal. And I would also say to you that if Amazon comes to the Washington region and has 50,000 new jobs, am I willing to bet that a good number of people that come to work for Amazon will live in Montgomery County, regardless of where it is? You bet I am. So I think Montgomery County will benefit if it comes to the Washington region. And we are going to make a play for it all to be right here.
And I was going to ask, other jurisdictions have detailed their proposals. DC came out with 4 today. That was detailed in the Post. Prince George's County Executive Rashern Baker detailed 2 sites in Prince George's County. Baltimore obviously has released theirs. Is Montgomery County going to put this out to the public and say, here's the sites we're pitching to Amazon?
I've had those conversations. I've urged the county executive to do precisely that. Now, there are obviously some things that we would not make public with respect to that, but there is enough information as to how strong this proposal is and how excited our county is and how excited our county's businesses are with respect to this proposal. There was some question in the business community as to whether or not we could get our act together and really put forth a competitive bid. And I'm willing to bet you that when people see how strong this proposal is, that will address that concern. We will have a very competitive proposal. We check off all the boxes that Amazon is looking for.
So those locations could be made public by the end of the week?
It is not for the council president to release that information. I suggest that you talk to our county executive with respect to that. I can only tell you that I have suggested to our county executive that he release as much information as is allowed to be released. There was a concern at one point that the RFP itself talks about confidentiality. And so we don't want to do ourselves a disservice by releasing information. But it is noteworthy that other communities that have read that same RFP feel like they could release some details with respect to it. But I have been working this very hard at the Council of Governments with our private sector partners, with WMATA itself, which will be a part of what you see from our county. Anything else, gang? Going once, going twice, sold. Thank you.